Brother Jim Gleason, who's going to be speaking with us this morning, is a member of Asbury United Methodist Church, right up the road here in Cinnaminson. On the few short years that I've known Jim, I've enjoyed our conversations and his outgoing and positive personality. I think anyone who knows Jim knows how friendly he is and how easy to talk to, and I've appreciated that. It is his faith and what God has done in his life that makes him the man that he is. I've heard him speak a little bit about his past and his journey along the way with the Lord, but I'm looking forward to hearing more this morning, and I know we all are. So please help me welcome Brother Jim Gleason today.
A special relationship with the Moravian Church here. A number of you guys, led by Pastor Andy, came over when we did an organ donation day over at Asbury. Really appreciated that. And coming here to your breakfast, our men certainly feel a connection here. I hate to disappoint you, but the last time I was here, Greg, the strong man, did his thing. You know, he bent that quarter. I held that quarter. I tried to, it was real. It really was. I went and gave it back. He said, no, you can keep that. We put it up on our men's bulletin board for almost a year, in a little plastic bag, so people could see it. So it's an amazing time to come here and hear some stories. So I'm here to share with you today, as Andy said, the faith and the gifts that God has brought into my life, and it's a real blessing to be able to be here to share it with you. And so the title of my talk today is Life and Death, the Inevitable. And I put it as a foundation of hope when I read from Ezekiel chapter 18. Put all your rebellion behind you, and get for yourselves a new heart and a new spirit. For why should you die, O people of Israel? I don't want you to die, says the sovereign Lord. Turn back and live. And that's really my message today. You're not always going to be in control. He is, but you may not be, even though you may think you are. Death knows no age. Young people, you're not guaranteed tomorrow any more than any one of us are. Death is not the end. As Christians, we know it's only a passage home. Live today so death will be not feared. It's inevitable. We're going to die. Accept it. Don't live in fear. And it's not scary. I've been there. It's not scary. Let me take you back to, how old are you guys? How old?
22.
22, even younger than that. At the age of 17, I was working for a lumber supply company up in Fords, New Jersey here. And it was a summer job, off to college, you know that kind. And it was a great summer. I was having a good time. A lot of fresh air, a lot of sunshine, good exercise. And one day we had a delivery to make of wallboard, 3/4 inch, that's the heavy stuff. Okay, if you ever worked with 4x8, that was heavy stuff. So we had a crew of 4 going out with this load of 72 sheets of wallboard on the back of the truck. It was a hot summer day. And so the guy said, hey kid, why don't you ride up on top? I was the kid. And, hey, cool, you know, ride up on top, yeah. Open back truck, 72 sheets, I was on top, they were crowded in the cab. Coming up Route 18 in East Brunswick there, they took a jug handle turn. And the center of gravity must have shifted, and all of a sudden the truck was going. Now I got to tell you, you jump away from where the truck is going, right? At that moment, you just move. And I jumped the wrong direction. And so that entire load just landed right on top of me. Crushed me. I got to tell you, it was a hot day, the asphalt was hot. I could feel the burning in the side of my face. I was pinned. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was not in control, not physically. I was pinned. And at the age of 17, hey, my life didn't pass in front of me. But the first thought I had I was raised Roman Catholic. I've been going to Seton Hall University and been through the Catholic schools. And for whatever reason, this is not something I did every week, that Saturday, I had gone to confession. This was Monday. And the first thought I had, as I was pinned under there with no choice, wow, I went to confession Saturday, and it was total relief. I let go, and I passed out. I couldn't breathe. The guys got out of the truck, and the driver thought to turn off the engine, so there was no fire. The crowd gathered, but they didn't know somebody was underneath. But these guys started taking the sheets off, and a big black man came out of the crowd, that's the way they described it to me, and he started picking up these sheets and just throwing them off. And so I've been volunteering for the first aid squad for a number of years as a teenager. An ambulance came by on Route 18 and saw the accident and pulled over. And they got me out from underneath this, put me on a gurney, took me down to St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick. You know, there's one thing about being heavy, and I've always been heavy. It's called padding. With that load shifting and landing on top of me, I broke through, they say, about 18 sheets of that. No bones were broken. The side of my face was all from the asphalt. I've had no surgery done. It healed. The only residue of it was I needed to wear glasses for the rest of my life, the ophthalmologist told me. I did that for about a year, going for exercise. I said, how long do I have to do these exercises? Probably the rest of your life. Right. A year later, I took the glasses off, never wore them since, and I got 20/20 vision. Several lessons from that. First of all, there was absolutely no fear when it happened. You had no choice. It wasn't like you could fight for it. It wasn't like you could swim to try and save your life. You were just under his control. But I wasn't out of control. Physically, I couldn't do anything, but mentally I could. And that's the power we always have. To realize we're not alone. God was with me. I was clean. Catholics don't think in terms of, like we do in the Methodists, that God has died and we are saved. You got to say confession and save yourself almost, you know. And so it was a matter of realizing that I had just been forgiven for everything. And it was okay. And I accepted that. And so it changed my outlook on life. I no longer had any fear of dying. I'd been there, to the edge, looking over the edge, and he came back. And so I had a stronger faith in God's plan. I didn't know what his plan was, but obviously it wasn't my time yet. Life was good, and I went on for many years raising 3 teenage children, working corporate America. Everything was always good. I never had an issue, health-wise or otherwise. And let me ask you a question. If you had a choice, which we don't, of a place to die and a way to die, what would you choose? Interesting question, isn't it? I had never thought of that, but on one business trip I had the good opportunity to go back to where, as a child, I had been raised, down in Australia. I had spent 3 years there as a young kid, 7, 8, 9 years old. Great place, great country for a kid to grow up in. Lots of adventure. We had a kangaroo as a pet across the street. I mean, really. Cockatiel was like a cardinal around here. Not rare, but certainly something you'd notice. And a great place to grow up. And so I always wished as an adult, I wondered what it would be like to go back to Australia and have a business opportunity to go there. And as part of that, I was able to take a free trip up to the Great Barrier Reef, which is one of the 8 wonders of the world. And so I went out on this huge catamaran. I mean, 400 people fit on this catamaran. So when I say catamaran, I think of a small thing. This is a big thing, a tourist boat. And it goes way out in the Pacific over the Great Barrier Reef. There's nothing to see out there except under you. There's no land in sight. And so you have opportunities to do different things. And one of the opportunities was to go snorkeling. I keep wanting to say scuba. It wasn't scuba. It was just with a tube, you know. And so I'd never done that before. And so I went off with 2 marine biologists and a bunch of gray-haired seniors in this little launch off from the main boat, and there's a pontoon out there, and these boats dock at the pontoon. And away we went, out of sight even with the boat. And so we get in the water with a wetsuit. They didn't have one my size, but I had one on. And so I didn't realize how tight it was, but then I got in the water, and without thinking, a couple of years earlier than that, I'd been diagnosed with a heart that had been attacked by a virus. And so it was a weakened heart. Yeah, okay. You exercise, you can get carried away, pump too fast, and you get scared, okay? And so when I put my head in the water to do this snorkeling, your body says, what are you, crazy? You can't breathe underwater. And it gets nervous. Well, when a weakened heart gets nervous, it starts beating too fast, and it doesn't do its job. And what happens is the lungs fill up with blood. One of the functions of the heart is to relieve the blood from the lungs. So here I am in the Pacific Ocean, my head in the water, as this marine biologist is bringing things up to show us, and I'm getting nervous. Well, when you have your head in water, as you may know, you can hear yourself. You can hear your heartbeat. What I could hear was the gushing, the gurgling of the lungs. You think I was nervous? I got more nervous. The heart beat faster. And so it gets really scary. And so I end up standing up in water to here. And the marine biologist says, don't stand on the coral, it's living coral. I said, it's either me or it. Are you all right? I said, no, I'm not. No, are you all right? I said, no, I'm not. I've got a heart condition that's acting up right now. So she takes my mask, and she says, all right, we'll go back and get the launch, come back and get you, but I have to take everybody with me. I can't leave them here. And they left. I'm out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, standing on coral, knowing there's nobody in sight, and my heart is going like crazy. What would you do? There was absolutely no fear. I looked up and we laughed together. Honest to God, I laughed out loud and said, well, Lord, we certainly did this time, didn't we? We, right? As you know, my friends back home, if you ever get there, will laugh. Leave it to Jim, did it his own way, died on the Great Barrier Reef off Australia. Well, needless to say, that didn't really happen. They brought the launch back. I got on the launch. They're going to take us back to the ship. I said, no, I'm all right now. And once you settle down, it's okay. And so they went off. I stayed on the little boat. Another guy in the water. He was having trouble, and I helped him out. He was having the same problem I did. But I had 2 years of it, so I knew what it was. I knew what to do. He didn't. And so I was at the right place and right time to give him, to share life with him. And so what was my lesson out of that? The faith was even stronger. You're never alone. You're not always in control. And so even out in the middle of the Pacific with nobody in sight, no land, nothing, I wasn't alone. I had a loving Father who was there with me. And so still, I don't know what my plan was, what his plan for me was, but life continued. And so again, no fear of dying, no scary part of death. Death would be what? Again, if you have the faith that we have. And so I came back to the United States shortly after that trip. And sometime later I found myself at work trying to do some paperwork and couldn't concentrate. And finally I just stopped to see what it was. And best I could describe it to you, if you've ever been hit with a wave of water and got a bunch of water and you choked it up, you know that feeling? There's a little bit left. You know what I'm talking about? That's exactly what I felt like. So I picked up the phone and I called my cardiologist and I said, hey, what was going on? She said, can you come here right now? When your cardiologist says, can you come right now? The only answer is I'm on my way. And she did some more testing. Well, initially, 2 years earlier, the heart had been tested. It was functioning at 37% of its function. A virus attacks muscle, it attacked the heart. That's what it was. But I was still doing work. I was getting older. When I crossed that parking lot, I had to put my bag down, catch my breath. So finally, it was there. She said, you did some more tests. You're down to 17% of your heart function. Now, you make a fist. They tell us that's about the size of your heart. 17% is less than a fifth of that function. Can you imagine that? I mean, still doing what I consider normal. Okay. In my talking, I didn't realize I was pausing between every word for a breath. Nobody said anything. I didn't notice it. She says, it's time. You need to cease employment, go down and see the experts. I gotta tell you, if you're gonna have a heart problem, you live in a great area to have it. Philadelphia's got some great heart centers and some great transplant centers, because she said, it's time, all right? You're gonna need a heart transplant. They had told me earlier, when they tested the heart, we'll put you on some medication, it may heal itself. If that doesn't work, we'll keep you on the medication. If that doesn't work, we have to give you a heart transplant. This was back in 1992. We didn't talk about organ transplants then. Put somebody else's heart in another body? Ooh. But that's what I lived with. Took the medications, didn't get better, but was doing okay on it until this happened. And so I ended up down at the hospital, University of Pennsylvania, with a team who described what this was all about. I was amazed. 89% of people in 1994, we're talking about, were still alive at the end of the first year after a heart transplant. Wow. 79% were still alive after 3 years. And so what was meant to be an education trip became a decision trip. And so we said yes. In those days, 1994, September of 94, that meant you went in the hospital and you waited because they said, Mr. Gleason, you've got less than 2 years to live. That was not scary. I knew I was going to die someday. If you're born, you're going to die. With faith, it's okay. But, they said, for those 2 years, you're going to be sitting in a chair. In order to get over to the dinner table, someone's going to have to help you across the room. Gentlemen, that was scary. I like yourself, I could do just about anything I wanted to do, but that was scary. Not dying, being handicapped. And so I said yes. Ended up waiting in the hospital. And I asked you, what was I waiting for? Either one of two things, right? I was waiting for somebody to die in just the right way so that they could be an organ donor and to say yes to organ donation and for their heart to be right for me and for me to be at the top of the list of those waiting. The other alternative was also death, my death. And so that's what I spent those weeks in the hospital waiting. There was no scariness about that either. Found things to do. You felt pretty good with the drip they had you on. After about 5 weeks, when the team came in one day, I said, you know, for the first time, I really feel like a patient. I feel punk. And they said, okay, and told the nurse to up the drip. Next day they came in, asked the same question. I felt the same way. They upped that drip again. After they left that day, I remember sitting next to the bed and thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. I know what's going on. This heart's really failing now. And they're doing everything they can. This was before the mechanical assist devices they have now. They were approved the next month of all things. But so when they came in the third day, I said, let me see if I figure this out. This heart's really failing now. There's nothing more you can do. And they were right. I said, where am I on the list? I thought I was on a list waiting. They said, you're number 3 on the list. There's been no movement on that list for 3 weeks. There really isn't a list. There's a database down in Richmond where over 110,000 people today are waiting for organ transplant. And in that database, when somebody says yes to organ donation and dies in just the right way, and less than 1% of death even qualify to be organ donors, and half of those don't agree to be organ donors, so you can imagine how scarce those organs are. These people are dying at the rate of 18 a day while they're on the list. And so when somebody says yes to organ donation and dies in just the right way, and the evaluation of the different organs takes place, and so let's say a heart becomes available, then they go against that database with the characteristics of that heart to match up to people that are in the database. And now a list is created. So the list only exists while an organ is offered. And so I didn't know that. I accepted his word. And when he left, I said, please, I'm not giving up. But tell the team I want to say thank you for all they've done. That night, I went to bed not knowing if I'd wake up the next day. No nervousness, no fear of death. I said my evening prayers, the Our Father. There's that phrase in there that you probably don't think much about until you get something like that. Thy will be done. Wow, I did everything I could do. It's up to you now. And so I went to sleep like a baby. Next morning, one of those nurses came in much too early, as they always do, 6 o'clock, you know, do vitals, whatever. Said, Mr. Gleason, we have a phone call for you at the nurse's station. Nurse's station, okay, well. So with IV pole in tow and slippers, out I went to the nurse's station to take a phone call. It was Heather, the transplant coordinating nurse. Mr. Gleason, I think we have a heart for you. Wow. I said to her, thank you. I looked up and said, thank you. I told my family, I said, you better get down here, something's going to start happening. Well, it doesn't happen very fast. It takes quite a while before they organize the different teams and get to wherever the donation is going to take place and bring the gift back. So it was late that afternoon when a couple pretty nurses came in and said, it's time. Took me down to the gurney, telling me some jokes. We smiled together. Loved the pretty nurses. And he hung back from 100, got about 95, and was asleep. That's all I remember. Next thing I know, I woke up and it's a room with no windows. There's a clock there. It said 6 o'clock. I went down around 3 or 4. It's about a 5-hour operation. No pain. There was a nurse doing something. She was working on a tube in my throat. And so I knew that this hadn't happened. When they go to retrieve the organ, sometimes there's something wrong with it, so it's called a false start. Ron, there were three of us that have been waiting, Ron, John, and I, the three heartbeats, bodies eagerly awaiting transplant surgery. And Ron had been called down twice before, and it wasn't good, so he came back. Quite a roller coaster ride. So we were sort of expecting that. And so I said to the nurse, actually I wrote on a pad, false start, huh? She looked at me, she said, Mr. Gleason, didn't they tell you? You have a new heart. It was 6 o'clock the next morning. I had woken up in the middle of the night. Tammy saw me with 40 tubes coming out of me. I don't remember any of that. All I can know is when you have cardiomyopathy, a failing heart, you never get a breath of good air. And so for the first time in a long time, oh God, did that feel good. She finished her work, the doctors came in and said, how you doing? It's good. How's the pain? I don't have any. Oh, when that anesthesia wears off, you will. And they left. They come back about noontime, asked the same question. I still had no pain. In fact, I've mentored hundreds of people through this operation. When you think what they have to do, I mean, they have to cut through here, then saw through the breastbone, split it apart, go down through the cardium, down into the heart, sew that all back up, wire the sternum back together, staple this back up, and no pain after all that? Really, no pain. And so when they came back, they said, how you feeling? I told them, fine. They said, you think you can sit up? I don't know, can I? Here, we'll help you. And so less than 24 hours after a heart transplant, you're sitting on the side of the bed. You want to walk over the chair over here? Okay. And so, hey, it wasn't a marathon, okay? But I walked across the room within 24 hours. I was absolutely amazed. And so within 10 days, I was out of the hospital, back home. And I got to tell you, my daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, said, Dad, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go outside. I mean, it's October. No, it was early November. It just felt so, it was a beautiful day just like this. I wanted to get outside finally. And so we went for a walk just up around the sidewalk. And I stopped and I said, look. And she, what's the matter, Dad? I almost gave her a heart attack. I wasn't thinking. I mean, you know, here she's had a dad die in heart failure, got a heart transplant. I gave her such a shock. I said, look at the grass, how green it is. Look at the trees, how colorful in the fall they were. It was just amazing to see God all around us. And so, went through some rehab for a couple months, went back to work 3 months later, continued working for another 15 years, and then finally retired. And so, out of that reaffirms once again the experience, okay? There's no fear in dying. You're going to die, accept that. Hey, can you die in different ways that you wouldn't want? Yeah. But the death itself is not something to fear. So don't let that get in the way of living your passion, whatever it is. Find the passion in your life. I've certainly found in helping others through this cause and by raising awareness of organ donation. And really that's what I'm here to say. One, transplantation really does work. Secondly, challenge you to say, what are you going to do with your organs after you die and don't need it anymore? Say yes to organ donation. When you revise your driver's license, say yes, I want to be an organ donor. Tell your family, so there's no conflict at that time. And I can remember a story. There was a father and 2 daughters who were faced with the loss of their mother, his wife, who was declared brain dead. And they were considering organ donation, and he couldn't face it. His 2 daughters said, but Dad, I think Mom would have wanted to do this. And they continued that argument even down the cafeteria. And the orderly came over and said, excuse me, sir, can I say something to you? Yeah, what? It's not a question of whether your wife is going to be an organ donor or not. She will be an organ donor. The question is whether you're going to donate to the ground or to save somebody's life. And he walked away. Wow. And the father thought about that. He turned to his 2 daughters and said, let's go back upstairs. We have some papers to sign. And so that's the thought I'd like to leave with you today. One, we are truly blessed as Christians to know that this life is temporary. And I got to tell you quite honestly, it's not that I don't fear death, I don't, but I'm really curious about what follows this in terms of the experience. And so that curiosity is helping me say, you know, with each passing year, I'm getting closer to it. But just as I tell many people, the transplant doesn't prevent death. It extends life. You're still going to die. And so the question really is, what are you going to do with that extension of life, with a transplant, for example, or in our context today, what are you going to do with the gift you have of the fellowship, of the faith you have, of your life today. What is your passion? What is it that you're doing with the life you have? Be it one day, this may be the last day, we never can tell, or the next 20 years. So, think about that. An exercise that a couple of us got into a couple years ago was to write our obituary. Sounds kind of gruesome, doesn't it? We were talking about priorities in life, and I suggested this. I'd heard about it someplace. And so we wrote our obituaries. I thought it was an easy thing to do. Next time we're getting together for dinner, next month we're going to sit and compare. And so I forgot about it until the last minute. And so at lunchtime, the day we were going to meet for dinner, I was sitting there at my desk at lunchtime trying to quick throw together an obituary of all things. How hard could this be? And I had something I cut out of the Philadelphia Inquirer, somebody's obituary that I thought the model seemed right. I don't read obituaries. But it was there, and I thought, okay, let me get my word processor and just do this, right? And so the title was the person's name. James Gleason, comma. Okay? The next was a number. How old was the person? Wow. How long do you want to live? How old do you want to be when you die, if you had a choice? You know, I thought about that for quite a while before I could fill in a number. I eventually came up with a number and justified my own mind. Then it was comma, and then there was 2 or 3 words describing that person's life. Well, you want to summarize your whole life in 2 or 3 words. What words would you use? This was a lot harder than I thought. I must have spent an hour just working on this top line, and the first 2 words were easy. James Gleason, I mean, that was easy. And so I would challenge you, because the next thing you do is you say, you know, Jim Gleason died, blah, blah, blah. How did you die? Oh, I just want to go to sleep and not wake up. And I thought about it, I thought, you know, that's not me. I'm not going that way. And so I got to create, how did I die? Hey, my parachute didn't open over Valley Forge in an event promoting organ donation. That's what I finally put down. I always wanted what to be like. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And then it went down to, you know, he worked for Unisys Corporation for how long? Wow, I hadn't even thought about retiring yet. How long did you want to work before you retired? It was an amazing exercise that I would recommend to anybody. Put it down, and then here's what happens. After you've written it, and write it to the future, right? This is when you died. So if you're going to die, if you plan to die 20 years from now, plan out what you're going to do in those next 20 years. Now, take that document and look at it and say, what do I have to accomplish between now and then to make my dream come true? To make my life what I wanted it to be? That's an amazing thought. How many of you have seen The Bucket List, the movie? Okay. If you've seen it already, I'd recommend seeing it again. But look at it for the lessons. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a great movie, and it talks about exactly that. Making a list of things you want to accomplish in your life, and these 2 guys go out and do it. Very good movie, wouldn't you say? Highly recommend it. So out of this action today, go off, do those 2 things, and most important of all, live your faith in Jesus' message of salvation and eternal life with Him. Thank you very much.
Good job, brother. Amen.
Wow, that was a good message. Words that God wanted each of us to hear this morning. Words that will have an impact on the rest of our days, however many we may have. I've actually been an organ donor since the moment I got my driver's license back in Wisconsin at age 16. So continue to do so.
And thank you for that.
Knowing of that importance, something my parents instilled in me. They're also organ donors. And that's so what a wonderful message. We'll donate either way. These bodies are temporary. But the heart, the essential soul that God's given us, endures forever.
Amen.
So Brother Jim is bringing to us here today. So not only will we maybe accept that challenge to be organ donors. But what the Lord truly wants, as He mentioned, is for us to give our hearts, our true selves, that which will last forever, to God. To be changed truly in whatever time we have left here before we make that great journey forward, that great journey home. So thank you again, Jim.
Thank you for the opportunity, Andy.
Are there any other announcements before we stand for our last?